Hi there, I'm having a virtual cuppa with Laurent Lambert, who is solution lead for the blockchain practice over at IBM Consulting. And Laurent's a cryptocurrency guru, blockchain specialist, and he's here today to talk to us about some of what he's seeing happening out there in the blockchain world in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Hi Laurent, how's it going?
Hi Simon, I've got my virtual cup as well. It's pretty real. So thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Laurent, I suppose I wanted to start asking you about what are you seeing out there in the world at the moment in terms of sort of frequently asked questions you get in, sort of chatter that you're hearing out there in the blockchain world?
Yeah, well, it's pretty chaotic for the moment. I think the world is getting to grip with this COVID story, and this has, highlighted some of the main issues around supply chain specifically, where blockchain's got a lot of applications. So a lot of, very large firms and smaller firms had a, massive breakdown in the supply chain, trying to bring stuff from all around the world and suddenly realizing it's not possible. So I really start freaking out, packing on toilet paper and stuff like this, trying to get a grip on this. And so what we're going to see is more discussion around, hey, okay, how can we make this better? Why do we have single point of failure? How can we diversify our source of supply? And blockchain is some of those answers, especially around transparency. I think what we've seen is really opaque organization not really understanding how they get stuff. And so now I think there will be a much more focus in having transparent, trusted, honest supply chain that, doesn't break down when something happens. Even though obviously COVID was, something specific, they call it a black swan or whatever, but it shows organization that they need to get into that path if they want to, to survive the next big crisis. I think there was a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, do you think it's the death of sort of just-in-time supply chain and sort of?
Yeah. But this become a more philosophical discussion. I mean, are we going to see manufacturing coming back? I doubt it. The dollar always talks. We're going to have a year of, let's do this. And then they realize it's 10 times the price. And then we'll go back to what we might see. It's in place of having one big country supplying the rest of the world. It's going to be, spread. And obviously some critical manufacturing will need to be brought in. And that's going to have to be driven by government. I think where blockchain can maybe provide a service. And one of the initiatives, for example, that IBM did is they created a blockchain-based ecosystem where buyers could jump to find sellers. So it was mostly driven by the States, but let's say you're a hospital and you need PPE, so mask and gears for your doctors. If you didn't have any and your normal supplier didn't have any, you could jump into that ecosystem and have a series of pre-vetted suppliers there that could actually provide you with the goods. So really fast track the process. And that's one of the advantages of blockchain, and you can really have a trusted kind of ecosystem where people who's in it, if it's a permission blockchain like we do at IBM, who they are, and they've generally been vetted before they can participate into the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously been one of the, I suppose, the big things that's one of the many big things that come out of COVID is the trust of supply. Supply chains become quite politicized, where stuff comes from. Obviously, the tensions in Australia and China and etc. I mean, and blockchain, obviously, one of the main applications that is building that trust. I mean, do you see that as the main thing that's come out of COVID and blockchain is its application trust?
Yeah, it's trust. But I mean, where blockchain started with Bitcoin, and it was around duplication of real value. So how do you make sure something you live in the digital world only have one, not two, not three? So or you can ensure it's not being duplicated. So that's really what blockchain has really allowed, is the creation of value that can be transferred online without the needs of a third party. So I think from that standpoint, if you look at it, it's blockchain. What it does is create the same kind of trust around anything that's data related. So a lot of organizations out there don't really use blockchain for money or things like this. They use it because they want to trust the information that comes to them. It hasn't been tampered, it hasn't been played with. And when you've got this, you've got a system, an ecosystem get built up where you can have you, your supplier, your competitors, the government that's kind of start, playing together in the same kind of sandpits without any privacy or security issues. And there's a plenty of examples that you can see appearing. In IBM, I think one of the big ones we've got is something called IBM Food Trust, where organizations like Walmart or in the States or Kroger, they are tracing food origin. So you know where your food comes from, which is becoming more and more important for people. I think there's a big kind of focus for consumer to understand the provenance, where your food comes from, if it's been, grow in a organic way or in ethical way. And so the ecosystem now has got 4 or 5 of the largest, retailers, the old competitors, Carrefour, Kroger, Albertson, Walmart. We're talking to some of the big ones in Australia to join as well. And so you create this system where everybody's going to start sharing information left, right, and center. The supplier can share with multiple retailers. And you've got this ecosystem of trust around food. And we've got the same around tracking containers. In Australia, we're doing banks, putting bank guarantee on the blockchain, which is also like a process that's being digitized, basically.
Well, obviously that as a process that's been going on for a long, long time. I mean, is a COVID-19 crisis accelerated the adoption of that sort of process, or is it slowed it down?
It didn't specify. I mean, obviously it went so fast. I think a lot of companies are just trying to, get rid of the fire that's in the backyard for the moment. But the discussion have started. Mining firm want to understand where the things are. Retailers looking at the same thing. I think if you look, especially at supply chain, the way that it's been done before, it's an organization will have a lot of information inside the perimeters. You know what's going on in your organization. And sometimes one up or one down. So maybe you know what your consumer is doing, and maybe you know what your supplier. But some of the supply chain are longer. And then this is what we've seen here. You buy it to someone that buys to someone else that buys someone else. And how do you know where the goods come from? And this is where you get seeing a point of failure that company didn't even see coming, because they didn't realize that the company they were buying for were just a middleman. And so having visibility on this will allow companies to make better decisions. And this doesn't exist in silo neither. Blockchain is really a way to access data for organizations they couldn't do before. So if you add, artificial intelligence on top of it, for example, you'll be able to start analyzing this data, because one of the problems you're going to see is the amount of data that's being captured is getting just huge, millions and millions of, bytes that comes every day. And most of it is not specifically useful for you at that specific moment. So how do you triage between all of this? And that's where AI will play a big role to start making, analytics on the information and kind of report it to you in a meaningful manner. And I mean, for large organizations, it's more important because they've got huge amount of, sites, employees, and suppliers.
One of the other things that we were chatting about before, and one of the really interesting things that is emerging and will continue to emerge due to this crisis is, you mentioned the COVID tracking apps that we have here, and countries have brought out different versions of that with varying levels of intrusiveness into people's privacy. And one of the things with blockchain is that ability to track identities and that kind of stuff. I mean, how useful is blockchain in that side of the response to COVID, and where do you see that going?
That's a very good question. Interesting question as well, because it's philosophical as well. If you look in Australia, we know we get crazy around an app that's pretty safe, that doesn't even share anything with anybody. And people were like, oh, no, I don't do this, my privacy, my security. For information, they probably already get from your phone because you're using Google Maps. So it's quite interesting for me to see I think what blockchain will create, and this is probably one of the most kind of utopic use of the technology, is the ability to possibly create self-sovereign identity, where, you know, as a citizen, you will own finally your data. So no more my health government problems or COVID app problems, or having to share your information with banks to do KYC, so know your customer. You know, they have to know who you are, so you fill those forms constantly. You'll be able instantly to kind of share the information with who you want without even sharing information. You can just prove who you are and prove, you know, stuff to organization by using cryptography and blockchain technology to ensure it's true, trusted, and secure. And so I've actually personally had already some discussion with the government here in Australia. It's far away, unfortunately. I think there's still a lot of psychological barrier in the middle, especially around transforming Australia into an Orwellian, you know, paradise. If you look at China, they're probably going to use it to control you. I think if we do it in Australia, because we're a democracy, it would be a lot more in the benefit of the citizen, which may be why it would be hard for government to do it. It's a different question. I think it will happen. I mean, ultimately, there's, I think, 14, you know, departments in Australia, plus all the states, plus your council, plus, you know, your banks, plus your insurance. All those people have some kind of information on you for you to be a customer or for you to be a citizen. It's this amount of duplication is just crazy, you know, and that's why you've got issues with stolen identity, for example, which is really easy to do online. Like, because it's all out there, and then nobody can really know who you are. So this will solve some of those issues. Hopefully not creating people with no identity, which might be a side effect. You know, if you get through the crack, how do you get in?
Yeah.
Science fiction.
So, I mean, do you see this, you know, having an app that tracks our whereabouts and who we talk to, and, you know, 3 months ago that would have been science fiction, and now it's the new normal. I mean, do you see one of the results of COVID as those sorts of things become more normalized, and maybe don't leap straight into it, but we start moving towards that? Do you see that as a possibility, or do you think it's still too far away?
No, I think it highlighted something here that people didn't maybe realize is every day you share data with organization that's going to sell it to someone else. You know, you use Facebook, you know, you go on any website with cookies, you know, they're retargeting you. All those information is you leaving little breadcrumbs, you know, digital breadcrumbs. And so when people get crazy about an app like COVID, which they spend a lot of time putting a legislation around it to make sure that it didn't have that kind of problem, didn't really gather any data on the location itself, or just about if you cross that person. So it was very light, and people get crazy. So it just shows there's maybe, you know, a part of the industry, or in part of the world we're living in, that's very opaque, that we don't understand. You know, the social media, selling your stuff, for example, that maybe people should wake up to, because they're way more dangerous for you than a COVID app. Yeah. Now, I mean, I think the big question is around government having access to this. And this is a good government today, but, you know, imagine a bad president come and start using those data, or a bad prime minister, and then suddenly, you know, it becomes a tool for terror, which is possible as well, or for control. So you have to be careful. I think blockchain will probably bring some of those control into your hand as a citizen. You'll be able to know who you share it with. I think that's kind of the key here, being a self-sovereign identity. And don't forget, you know, we live in society. It's not about you alone doing your own thing. We need to, you know, it's about making sure we survive together. I think some of the people, especially in America, for example, where they get crazy about COVID and having mask and no mask, and how it breach on their freedom, you know, it is somewhere, you know, us living together and having tool like blockchain that can allow it in a safe and free manner.
Yeah. And honestly, when you explained to me, you know, we're talking about blockchain's origins before we started recording, and you were sort of saying that originally blockchain in form of Bitcoin and currency came out of the the sort of fire of the GFC sort of rose as a response to that, and so do you mean as an alternative to the traditional financial system that had got us into the GFC? I mean, do you see that this next big crisis that we're now in, is it, blockchain obviously evolved significantly from there, from that sort of anarchistic, cyberpunk type origins. How do you see it sort of, that next step for it from here?
Yeah, it will have an impact. The impact might not be where you think, which is interesting as well. The application of blockchain for enterprise, I think it's ticking along. It will take some time. Companies don't, change their system, especially big system like that runs in the back that easily. But it's happening. Ecosystem are getting built. But I think one thing you're going to see rather quickly is the rise of Bitcoin, and it just because it's a counter cycle to what's going on around the world for the moment, which every government are printing money. I mean, like crazy. Everyone, trillions of dollars is being printed as we speak, just to kind of save us somewhere. And so that will, create a very fertile environment for a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin to raise, because it becomes this only place you can put your money that's not going to lose value, basically. Same for gold. I mean, it's just become the gold 2.0, I guess, or the digital version of it. So I think that will go rather quickly, in my opinion. But I just, time will tell, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So that because a lot of what you do isn't, well, most of what you do isn't around currency applications of blockchain, is it?
No. So what we do this is the difference. There are public blockchain like Bitcoin, where anybody can just go and participate, and then there are permissioned blockchain, which we just use the technology to resolve business problems. So in IBM, we don't play at all with the coin side of it and the public, because that's not what we do. Enterprise needs to have some control. There are some governance and regulation framework that needs to be followed, and so anything that's public just out of control. And if you can't control, so in blockchain there's a few aspects. There's a technology. It works. It's been proven now. I think that's not a problem anymore. But there is a whole aspect of governance around the ecosystem you built. You've got all those organizations in there. How do you manage the playbook, the rules that are governing everybody that's actually in there? That is really the challenge. Because when you got big banks that are competitors, try to agree on something, and what's very interesting in this, it's a very much a give and taken. It will advantage you, but it will advantage me. It's a win-win situation. And what you see with a lot of those organizations is they would prefer to lose if they know someone else is winning. It's like it's almost shoot yourself in the foot.
Lose to a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. You prefer lose than a win-win. So it takes a lot of efforts to drive those. And this is probably one of the reasons you don't see a lot of startup really rising, even though it's been 4 or 5 years now that the movement, and they had a lot of capital to play with. And I've seen it with IBM, and it's maybe the only reason why IBM is pretty good at this game is because they're so big and they're slow and they've got so much time. They can actually fence off these effects and gather those people together and drive this. If you have to look at constantly looking at your capital, and you want things to move fast, and you need to get this government and these companies and these large companies to get together to make any movement, then it becomes a very tricky situation. And so that's probably why the adoption is slower than what people were expecting. It's just that it just takes time. I think the technology is mature enough, and slowly you will see those ecosystems grow and grow and grow. And then they reach a point where if you're not in it, then you really lose it. Yeah. And we've seen that with one of our ecosystem called TradeLens, which we are tracking containers around the world. So we're digitizing the shipping, basically, business, which is almost impossible if you think about it. There's so many countries, so many different rules, governments. There's up to 40% of the cost of shipping something is red tape. And so how do you get people to get along and have one way of working and kind of start sharing information? It's been difficult. We've been going, I think, 3 years now, and now we've got around 65% of the ecosystem of the shipping, worldwide shipping, being traced. And you start seeing other use cases appearing, like banks start plugging into this, so you can start automated trade finance. And so that's the future, you know, where suddenly everything is going to start become automatic, something called smart contracts, which can govern business rules. So you can have automatic payment, for example, if you reach a certain milestone without any human actions, all robots and computer code. And so we're starting with this, and then, you know, I think if you project yourself 50 years from now, it's Blade Runner, you know, where everything just goes around on their own, and
yeah,
and cars fly. Car will have a self-identity to make the link with what we talked about before. You know, be a robot that can charge wherever they go, and then you pay them because it's your electricity through smart contracts. And, you know, you're a taxi driver that is owned by nobody. Or you can have a share of the taxi driver as an investor. I don't know, like there's so many potential with those technologies, exponential technologies like 5G, IoT, blockchain, AI, automation, that really gonna go together, you know, and really change, I think, the way we live.
Yeah, I think they're very early stages in how the full applications of those and how they can work together. And I mean, when you're sort of having a glass of, you know, glass of wine, whiskey at the end of the day, and sort of philosophizing, looking forward, what do you think the other side of this looks like? What do you imagine, I suppose, the biggest negatives that can come out of this, or the biggest positives that can come out of this? What do you see that the future post-COVID world looking like?
I think the biggest negative that can happen, and if I focus on the blockchain, obviously, which is the topic today, is it's like I was telling you about the atomic bomb. You know, it's one of those technology that can be used for good or for bad, I think. And, you know, we can see already some country like China where they start using the technology for control. It's one of the easiest way to control, and like everything is recorded. So, you know, if they know who you are, they can know exactly what you're doing at any given time. It's crazy. They can even trace you almost. Like that's the kind of utopic world you don't want to see. That's 1984 all over again. And that's where you use the technology for, you know, the wrong reason, I think. But if you use it for the right reason, you know, to provide clean energy, to make the metaphor, then you can provide power to the people, self-sovereign identity, most transparent supply chain that avoid having kids in it or eating some crap that you don't know how is being grown. Be able to vote with your wallet by knowing, because you don't know. You buy meat in the supermarket. Do you know where it comes from? You know, do you even know it's the real meat? I mean, there's some case in Europe where they were selling horses in place of beef. I mean, that's not uncommon. And so those kind of issues will start, you know, having the spotlights on them and hopefully disappear. And blockchain will be one of the tools that will allow this. Not only blockchain, I think blockchain is just the way to provide access to data and manage to transfer it between the different, you know, entities in a trusted way. But, you know, we will see hopefully we will see the positive side of it, where as a citizen you can own your identity and have all the positive. And like I was talking about, you know, the potential of smart contract is huge for robotic and start having automation around you. You don't even know it, you know, happen. I always take the example. Imagine you have a Tesla electric car and you go to a shopping center, and then you park your car there, and your car will charge itself, automatically being charged by the shopping center that's providing you the electricity, because there's a smart contract in there. So you don't have to do anything outside of, you know, maybe some parameters, and your car will, and maybe it comes out of your bank statements for the loan on the car. I mean, this potential is limitless. Or you can start joining all those dots together and having this kind of circular free flow economy.
I think one of the key words that's come out of a lot of the conversations we've been having with people, both doing the virtual cuppa and the and other chats as well, has been around innovation. One of the key things that's come out of this crisis is the acceleration of innovation, or the reuse of technologies or systems or processes going to go, well, we could use it for this. You know, it's sort of accelerating that the rate of adoption of new obvious stuff like people working from home using Zoom and other platforms, and that's just got into the roof and all those sorts of things. But also companies just pushing forward new technologies. I think there's going to be a massive surge in not only specific new technologies, but also people's acceptance of new technologies, a new way of doing things. I think whereas before it would have been a bit more resistant, I think.
No, you're right. And it's generally crisis does this to you. I mean, if always amazed that the enlightening years, back in the days, they came just straight after the Dark Age. It's almost like,
oh, the Enlightenment.
Yeah, the Enlightenment. That's it. It's almost
like lightning days is good.
The lightning years. Yeah. It's almost like people were getting so bad to a point that they need to innovate to survive. And I think you see that with crisis. People lose their job, and then suddenly they have to find a way to survive and to live. And so they invent stuff, create businesses, and go out there and start solving problems in place of being comfy working for a company or. And there's a lot of money being poured in research and development everywhere. Is that money is being really well used? Sometimes, you wonder, all the billions, where do they go? But yeah, hopefully we get some positive out of it, especially around what I really want to see, especially post-COVID, is a more circular economy at local level. And I'm not talking about for plastic toys and stuff like this. I'm more talking about whatever is vital for us, food. I was like water. I was reading that Australia, if the supply chain was completely cut off, we would survive 2 weeks because our water filtering system is all done overseas. So we would just run out of parts basically. And you're like, okay, well, maybe we should start to find a way to have a better way to manage this kind of survival. At least the basic, food and water to start with, and then obviously as you expand from the Maslow need into more of those stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I hope personally.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a massive global push towards countries being more self-sufficient, not in a sort of high-profile, politicized stuff. But I think, like you said, in that ability to. I haven't read that one in 2 weeks. That's freaked me out now. But the stuff like that to make sure a country can run or can switch its production quickly to survive.
Don't you think there's a danger in there? The danger of nationalism, for example?
Yeah, that would be my biggest negative, I think, that will come out of this crisis, personally, will be the rise of nationalism, isolationism, global scale. I mean, America's pushed back to levels of isolationism it hasn't been at since before the Second World War. That's my biggest fear, is nationalism, and I think with the rise of how information is spread, I think it's dangerous. It can grow very quickly. But I also do think that probably the biggest positive that will come out of this would be how people think about each other, like how if things are done right, thinking local, supporting, being a more self-sufficient country and producing, manufacturing, having your local supply chains doesn't have to be nationalistic. It can be, it can be a nice thing. It doesn't have to be nice. So I think that's probably the most positive would be people are nicer to each other and more connected and we appreciate each other more, a little less materialistic, hopefully. That's my hope.
No, it's a good hope. Interestingly, talking about buying Australian, for example, promoting IBM Food Trust, the traceability solution for food. I've met a lot of food companies in Australia, some of the biggest, and it's very interesting the disconnect between what people think they want to do and people do in real time, in real life with their wallet. So they call it voting with your wallet, I guess. They all, let's buy this, this well-grown Australian products, and then they go to the supermarket and it's, I don't know, $3 cheaper or $3 more expensive. So they buy the cheapest thing. It's like, and so, it's really hard for Brian to understand the dynamic sometimes, I think, of what people really think. And so hopefully this situation will start changing those mentality where people only see the short-term gain and not the long-term that they could do if they're actually buying stuff that were just more in their benefits, not only from a health perspective, but also from obviously work and jobs and, you know.
Your more localized economies, 100%. Well, hopefully the positives will come out of that and not the scary Blade Runner 1984 future.
I'm on the fence. You know? we see the end.
See how it goes. But all right, Laurent, pleasure talking to you. Thanks for having a virtual couple.
Thank you, Simon. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.